Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel, Confessions of an Autism Mom. And here I talk all things autism, raw and unfiltered, whether it's pertaining to my son or just my most interpersonal thoughts. So today I wanted to talk about this documentary that I watched on Netflix the other night. It's called Makayla's Voice, A Letter to the World. And basically, this is like the best documentary coming from a nonverbal person. And she's a teenager, actually. And to me, it hits every point pertaining to autism in a nonverbal child. And I'm not going to lie, I cried throughout this whole documentary. And it was only 24 minutes, but it was the best 24 minutes that I've spent. And I even said to my mom that if someone was to ask me what autism was, I would literally tell them go watch Makayla's Voice on Netflix due to the fact that sometimes it gets a little annoying trying to explain to people like what exactly autism is and how it affects our kids and how it affects us as parents, because most of the time, like, I have a very independent son. People, they're like, oh, he's normal, he's okay. And it's like, yeah, you just can't look at those few things and think that. So this is a very well put together documentary, and it hits all of the points that could possibly be hit. So when the documentary starts off, it starts off with Makayla trying to find her voice. And what I mean by that is a perfect voiceover to basically speak for her. And Makayla has already described to us that if she could talk, she would want her voice to be raspy. So she goes through three different voices, and the third one fits her perfectly. Which I'm like, oh, that's perfect for her. Like, you know how your voice matches you? That's how I felt about Makayla. I was like, oh, her voice matches her. So as the documentary goes on, Makayla then talks really quick. So that part made me cry that I now that I think about it, because my son has an AAC device. And if you are a parent and you have an AAC device, you know that in the beginning of us setting it up, we have to pick out a voice for our kids. And it was very emotional because it comes like you face the fact that your child may never speak to you verbally and will communicate with you through this device. So you want to make sure that you find the perfect voice for your child. So that was why it was so emotional for me. And I'm sure if other parents were to see it, they would find it emotional as well. So as the documentary proceeds on, Makayla talks about how she hears things differently from us atypical people, which I'm pretty sure is normal for all autistic or people that have autism. They hear everything in a heightened level. She talks about how she hears the wind blowing through the trees as music, whereas we're just hearing it as wind and we're trying to probably get out of it because we're cold. But she intakes it so differently and on a deeper level. And the fact that it's heightened explains everything, because a lot of times I was explained in the beginning of our journey that our kids hear things at a heightened level. And so when they hear them at a heightened level, it gets overstimulating because it's very loud. So, yeah, Makayla talks about that. As we go along, she talks about her family and who her parents are. And her parents come on and they talk about how they never thought that they would be able to communicate with their daughter, which I think we all have experienced that. Like, we're like, will we ever be able to, like, not even communicate, because they can communicate. It's just they're not verbal, but basically hold a conversation with our child. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to parents that have nonverbal kids. We don't know if we're ever going to hear our kids talk. So Dad comes on and he discusses how she has a depleted chromosome, which is a rare diagnosis, but it's related to autism, which was very interesting because I have been seeing lately on social media how parents are talking about like their kids not having a certain chromosome. So I think I'm gonna actually go through the process to get Aiden tested to see about that chromosome. So as we like continue to go through the documentary, Makayla writes these letters to her mom and dad, which are so everything was just short and to the point. Like we got to the point, and that's what keeps your attention. She tells her mom how much she loves her, how much she wish she could communicate with her on a regular, even though they don't. She really wants to. She explains to her mom how smart she is, how she soaks up everything like a sponge, but she processes it at a faster rate. And this should prove to people that say that autistic kids are dumb, this should prove to you all that these kids are like mini geniuses, because how she talks in these letters and just expresses herself to her mom and dad at 14 is amazing. And she tells her mom she just want to go on a date for Christmas with her dad at the aquarium. So the next scene, she actually goes on this date with her dad, and just the affirmation that she gives him, like he's the best dad and she's so lucky to have him as a dad, and don't ever doubt himself. Like that is just amazing to me. Like she can't talk, but she's really soaking up these good traits about her parents, and that should make any parent feel good. I don't care. Like if Aiden just like it's like a validation from a silent person. And I was so impressed with how Makayla expressed it and everything. And so before that, Makayla therapist Roxy speaks, and I'm assuming it's her speech therapist. I don't know if they really put in the detail who Roxy was, but basically Roxy is the one that assists her with the letter board. And so the letter board is like literally like a little board, and it has the alphabets on it, numbers, things like that. I wasn't familiar with the letterboard. The only time that I've seen it prior to Makayla's voice was on Instagram. His dad went viral because he actually got a letterboard tattooed on his arm. So that way, when they're in public, his son can pretty much just press the letter and communicate, spell out what he needs or wants from his dad. And I was like, that is so amazing, because I'm only used to sign language and basically the AAC device or whatever. So Roxy's portion was very interesting because she talks about how atypical people, we listen to respond. And that gets us in trouble a lot of times. Like we misunderstand what someone says, but when they tell us that, we don't really listen to them to understand that. We're listening to respond to what they're saying. So she basically says how like Makayla and other people that have autism, they process things on a different level. And when she meant different, she meant a deeper level. Like they reflect on things that is really so deep. And when I think about my son, like I'm sure he's 4, so he's not thinking about things so deep, but I'm more than sure that he is very like curious of a why. And I notice how he looks at certain things. He's very much into the detail of it all, which to me is the same thing as someone thinking at a soul deep level, because he's looking at why is this happening this way, or instead of like, oh, it's happening like that because it's happening. So then we get into elopement. And I think this is one of the biggest parts of the movie or the documentary that I enjoyed the most, because elopement took over our world for a really long time, because my son would just take off and run. And so we look at it as like, oh, I don't want to be there. He doesn't want to be in that place. But I really loved how Makayla described elopement. And when she talks about it, she really speaks on it as in like a out of body experience. Like her mind is leaving her body and she gets scared, so her feet goes to running and she leaves. That is a really deep thought, all because basically she's getting overstimulated. And it's not because she doesn't want to be somewhere, it's just that her mind leaves her body and her thoughts are literally. And she expresses how like like she wants to listen to music and she can at that moment. So her mind is taken over and it's taking things literally. And I've heard people say that people on the spectrum, they take things literally. And I never thought about elopement like that. I just always thought about, oh, Aiden doesn't want to be right here at this moment, so he's running. Or he likes to run, so he's eloping. But it's way deeper than that. And I really appreciated her like thoughts on elopement. And it was very like, you know, it's a very important, I don't want to say thing, because elopement is very serious. Like kids elope and they go to where they want to go and they end up like not returning home. So elopement is really deep in the autism community because we just in our head we're like, oh, they don't want to be here, they want to go where they want to go. And it's like Makayla is like, no, it's an out of body experience. Like my mind is literally leaving my body and I'm afraid. So that's very important to understand. She also talks about, which makes me cry thinking about my son. She wants to be normal. She states how she wants to be like her brother and sister. She expressed how she went to school, she wanted to experience the things that other kids experience and she can't because autism is her disability. Like that was so hurting because I always think about like, what if my son want to play football or basketball or run track? He can't because that autism is always gonna trump over everything because he can't control his emotions or he don't know how to express himself. And when she said that I cried for probably 10 minutes. I actually paused the documentary because I went like in my overthinking mode of my son, and it just really wasn't like a good feeling of that. Like I get it. And she just want to be normal. And so she also expresses in this scene how like she explains emotions. And I get that they can't regulate their emotions, but Makayla talks about how she can't regulate her emotions to the point that she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to handle it. And it makes me think about my son. Like he gets so emotional that it causes him to do things that he normally wouldn't do. Like I don't feel like my son would be so angry that he would hit somebody because they're in his way. It's just he doesn't know how to express himself. And her bringing that, it just brings autism for me and being an autism mom to a whole nother level because I am literally like, I didn't even think about it like that. I'm just thinking he processing things differently. He's mad because he can't regulate his emotions. I can't regulate my emotions either, but I know I can't just hit people and spaz out like that. Whereas she stated, like, we do things that we normally wouldn't do. And that should help people that are just getting into the autism game, and not even the game but the journey. And I don't mean game, please don't like go off on me in the comments, but just this journey, it should be able to help us like understand exactly what is going on. So after that, what I realized is Makayla is super smart, which all of our kids on the spectrum, they are super smart. And she just expresses different things on a different, like, cosmetic, I guess, like in the galaxy, she expresses, like she says, she understands those things on a deeper level. And I don't think that deep. And I just think it's so impressive that she can reach so deep, and how so deep she reached. Towards the end of the documentary, she talks about a snake, and she talks about how when snakes get out of their like habitat, like they're scared and they see these people who are fearful of them and are trying to like get rid of them, and they don't know how to control themselves. And she compared it to being autistic. And I would have never compared like a snake being out of their habitat and being afraid to an autistic person. Not because it's a snake, but it's just like the analogy of it. Like she really thought that, and she compared like how people treat her to how we treat snakes, and it just made like all the sense in the world. I will say that Makayla's voice was very like to the point, help you understand autism to a different level, even if you are an autism parent. Like we have to learn every day because it's something new every day with our kids. Nothing is the same. And I love personally how our kids are getting the exposure and helping people learn about them. Like nobody at this point in the world can say that they don't know anything about autism, because we the parents, we advocate, and this is what we advocated for people like Makayla and our kids to be able to tell their stories. And even with Love on the Spectrum, just to show that just because they're on the spectrum, that don't mean they don't want to be loved or they don't deserve love because they think differently. And I just say, like, this is what we have been fighting for. We have been fighting for inclusiveness, and we're getting it. It may not be our direct story, but it's a part of our story. And I just love how these networks are like giving our babies their shows and letting the parents explain it. It's even a show on Peacock coming out. I think it's called Traveling on the Spectrum. And these families are traveling with their kids with autism. So yeah, I give this show a 10 out of 10. Makayla's voice explains autism to the fullest. And if you have not seen it, I do advise going to watch it. And this is my first review on the show, and I am going to do other reviews on the show, but I just felt like it was so important to talk about Makayla's voice, because that show, well, the documentary was very short to the point and hit every bulletin point that can possibly be expressed about autism. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. But also comment below if you have seen Makayla's voice and tell me what you thought about it. I would really love to know how you all enjoyed it. But for now, I will see you all next time.